Okay, so we're gonna start lesson 1.4. Again, this is not new, it is review. And basically what we're doing is we're looking at a problem and we're gonna use a formula or an expression that have variables in it. We're gonna plug in the information that they give us and we're gonna solve a problem, okay? And I know that you've done this before in pre-algebra. I may do it a little differently, but there are steps that you need to follow, okay? So something that you need to remember is that when we deal with units of measurement, when you're done with your, and you get your final answer, you have to have a unit of measurement attached to it, okay? So I'm going to do example 1, and I want you guys, you can do it with me, and then when I'm done, I'm going to explain a few things, some of the expectations of what you should do for each of these problems, okay? So example 1 says, find the area of a triangle that has a base of 5 inches and a height of 4 inches. And I give you the area of a triangle. The area of a triangle is half base times height. Another way to write the area of a triangle that I prefer is area equals base times height divided by 2. And so that's how I always write it. But if you prefer to write it this way, you can. The first thing you always need to do is you need to write out the formula. Okay, write out the blank formula. So area equals base times height divided by 2. Step 2, you are going to substitute your variables with the values that you are given. I'm going to say that in different terms. You're just going to plug in the numbers that you have. Okay, so it gives us a base of 5 inches and a height of 4 inches. So I'm going, my base is B, my height is H. So I'm just going to plug in those values into the formula. So I now have area equals base, which they give me as 5, height, which they give me as 2, and we have to multiply those together. And then I'm going to take my base times my height, and I'm going to divide it by 2. So step 1, write out your formula. Step 2, plug in your numbers. Step 3 is going to be solving it. Remember, when you solve formulas or expressions, you solve them in the correct order of operations. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply 5 times 4. And I get 20. And then write whatever I didn't touch or whatever I didn't work on. Now I have a fraction and I'm going to simplify that fraction. In this case, I end up with a whole number. 20 divided by 2 is 10. The last thing you need to do is add your units. Our units and its area. So our units is their inches, but in area, we have to tack on the squared unit. And the way that you can remember this is when you're finding area, you're multiplying 2 values together. So you're going to have a square unit. And volume, you're multiplying 3 together. So you're going to have a cubed unit. And then do not forget to box your answer, okay? Okay, now that we've done 1, I'm going to go and we're going to write out the exact steps that you need to follow to solve all of these problems. And we're going to write them up here. Okay, so what did I tell you to do for step 1? Yeah, so write formula. This does not mean write your formula and at the same time write in the values of each of your units. This means write out your blank formula with all the letters, the variables, okay? Step 2, what are we going to do?
Replace the variables.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we're going to plug in values or plug in numbers. Shorten that if you need to. Step 3, we're going to take those values and we are going to solve. Okay, so step 3 is to solve. And then step 4, in order to make your answer 100% correct, you have to add the units. Okay, so if you ever get stuck and you don't know what to do next, please come back to your notes, check those steps, and especially when we start solving long equations, this is what you're gonna want to do. Okay, so we've done this one. Let's go down to example 2. Okay, in example 2, we're talking about distance. I do not know if you've seen this formula before, that D equals RT, meaning if you want to find the distance of something, you have to figure out how fast they're going and you have to multiply it by the time they're traveling. Okay, so have you guys seen this formula in pre-algebra? Okay, so somebody is driving along the freeway and in this area, they're going too slow. Okay, I used to live in California and the speed limit was 65 miles per hour. I come to Texas and now it's 70 and 80 miles per hour, which is kind of crazy. But anyway, so this person, maybe they're on a country road or something. They're driving 55 miles per hour and they're driving for 3.5 hours. And we want to know how far can they travel at 55 miles an hour for 3.5 hours. That is what this formula means. Okay, so what are we going to do first? Write the formula on your homework. If you do not write the formula first, 1 point off. If you do not show your units, another point off. So make sure that you're doing that. Okay, so distance equals the rate, how fast you're going, times the time that you're traveling. All right, next you're going to plug in your values. So let's go ahead and do that. We don't know our distance because that's what we're trying to figure out. The rate is 55 because the rate tells you your speed. So 55. And the time, how long you're driving, is 3.5 hours. I should have hours on there. How do I know it's not seconds? All right, another thing. On your homework, you're going to have to multiply out 50 times 3.5 because we're not using calculators until 4th quarter, okay? So I need to see that work. We're going to continue to practice this because when you take your test, you're going to have to multiply this all out because you don't have a calculator, right? So everybody go ahead and do 55 times 2.5 and do not forget the decimal. Okay, when you finish, go ahead and check your answer up here. Okay, any questions about the multiplication part? Okay, is this my correct answer? Yes. You gotta add the units, don't forget that. That's the one thing that most people forget. So what are our units here? Okay, yeah, I always go back to the problem and see what they're asking. They're asking for distance, not time. So it's just going to be miles. Good. Okay. Now we're going to go to example 3. We're finding the area of a circle with radius of 3 feet. Okay, I don't know if you remember the area of a circle, so I've given it to you. It's pi r squared. So first thing we're going to do is write out the formula. So go ahead and write that out. And you don't see it, but you have two values here. Pi is a value. So when we're dealing with pi, I want you to write pi out as 3.14. Okay. So you have a radius of 3 feet and pi is 3.14. So let's go ahead and plug in those numbers. And don't forget that you will be squaring your 3. And it does not matter if your exponent is on the inside of the parenthesis or on the outside of the parenthesis, okay? Now, I want you to go ahead and on your own, I want you to go or with your partner, so you can solve it and then check with the person next to you. I'm gonna give you about 2 minutes to do this, and then we'll come back and check your answer. Okay, I'm gonna show you my answer and I want you to check my work, okay? And if you see something wrong, I want you to tell me what that wrong thing is. It needs to be squared. That's right. We're finding area. Area is measured in square units, so make sure you have that too. Good. Okay, any questions? All right, let's move on to a volume problem. We want to find the volume of this cylinder, and it has a radius of 5 feet and a height of 12 feet. So go ahead and write out your formula, and the formula is given to you right down here. And then we're going to substitute all of our values. Remember, for pi, we're going to use 3.14. So go ahead and plug in all of your values. And now you are going to solve. And again, I want you to try to solve this on your own. You're going to have a lot of multiplication to do. Remember, multiplication follows the commutative property, which means that you can multiply it in any order that you want. Okay, you don't have to multiply it in that exact order. So go ahead and work on that one. Okay, so here is our answer for the volume of a cylinder. Did I mess up? Oh my goodness, I messed up. Oh, wait a minute. Wait a minute. Oh, I'm glad I got this. Hold on just a second, guys. First of all, I only multiplied it by 25. And then, see, I told you I make mistakes. Okay, so this would be 78.5, and now I have to multiply it by 12. Oof.
Why didn't you just multiply the 12 and the 25?
That's what I.
That's fine.
So that comes out to 300, and then you can just do 300.
Yeah, so good point. Remember, commutative property, multiply it any way you want. So that would have been a simpler way to do it. Okay, so let's see, 0, 15. Oh yeah, volume equals 942 feet cubed. Yeah, but I did it right the first time. I just did it wrong this time. I wasn't thinking. Okay. Okay, now we're all on the same page. Okay, let's go down to example 5, dealing with Fahrenheit and Celsius. So one of the things that we have to do is figure out which of the formulas to use. So this tells us that we're going to convert 68 degrees Fahrenheit to Celsius. So look at the two formulas I give you. I have Fahrenheit equals and I have Celsius equals. So which formula do you think that we're going to use? The one that is F equals or the one that is C equals? C equals, because it tells us up here that when you want to convert from Fahrenheit to Celsius, you have to use this formula. So we're going to write out our formula. Okay. And then I want you to substitute in the information that they give us. So listen, whenever you're doing your homework, make sure that you go back and look at your notes for any formulas. And if you have a problem and you don't know what the formula is, you can Google it. You can say, what is the formula for the area of a trapezoid? Or what is the formula for interest rate or whatever, okay? So go ahead, the first thing you want to do in order of operations is solve what's in the parentheses. So go ahead and do that first. Okay, so you should get 5/9 times 36. Now we're multiplying with fractions. And if we've forgotten that, I'm gonna show you, anytime you see a whole number and you need to make it a fraction, you put you put it over one. So over here, I'm gonna multiply 5/9 times 36 over 1. And I am going to cross simplify. I call it cross simplifying. Some teachers call it cross canceling. I call it cross simplifying because we're actually reducing the fraction or simplifying that fraction. So you cannot simplify 5 and 1, but you can simplify 9 and 36. Yep. So, yep, they're both divisible by 9. So 9 divided by 9 becomes 1, and 36 divided by 9 becomes 4. And in multiplication, you just multiply straight across. Yep. So 5 times 4 is 20, and 1 times 1 is 1. So our answer is 20 degrees Celsius. Oh, yep, there we go.
Yeah.
Okay, yes,
And that's not like huge or anything, right?
no degrees, no. Okay. All right, let's go ahead and move on to the back. It's something a little bit different. We're still substituting values in for variables, but these are not formulas. They're just expressions, okay? Expressions because there are no equal sign. There is no equal sign. Okay, so how do you evaluate an algebraic expression? You're going to write out your problem, and you're going to substitute all values into the variables, and then you're going to simplify the expression, or basically solve. So, directions. Evaluate each expression where x is 4, y is 5, and z is 2. Sometimes, to make it easier, we can highlight those if it will help. So, for example, I can make my x's yellow. And so all of my x's, I'll just highlight yellow. If this helps. If it doesn't help and it takes up time, you don't have to do that. Y's are going to be 5. So I'm going to highlight my y's. And z's are going to be pink. So, Z. Okay. Okay. Yeah, you can shoot them. All right, so I remember in your homework, if you get this problem, you're gonna write out the expression on your paper, and then you're gonna go in and substitute all of your numbers, but it's already written right here, so I'm just gonna start substituting in numbers. So what operation are we doing with 3 and x squared? What are we gonna do with those two numbers once we put them in there? We're gonna multiply them, so you wanna separate those by parentheses. So we're gonna have 3 times x squared, which is 4. So 4 squared. Then we're going to add that to 2 times y, and my y is 5. So now what we have is something you've already done in a different lesson. Just a problem involving order of operations. So the only thing new with this is just plugging in the numbers where they go. Okay. And so now you can go ahead and solve this. So go ahead and start solving this one. And you can always consult with your partner or finish the problem and then check your answers together if you'd like. Okay, when you're finished, I want you to check your answer, and then I'm going to explain something to you. Okay, I want you to see how I did 2 steps in one. Sometimes that's okay. But if that confuses you and you're afraid you're gonna make a mistake, then maybe just do 1 step at a time, okay? So you'll notice that I squared my 4 and I multiplied these 2 over here at the same time. So I eliminated one of my steps, and that's okay. All right, let's go ahead and go to example 7. Example 7 is very long. I heard Gracie say, oh, my Lanta or something. So we're just gonna plug in our numbers. So we start with 3. And we're gonna multiply that by x and then by y, so x is 4 and y is 5. Then we're gonna add that to 4 times x, which is 4, and z, which is 2. Then we're going to add that to 2 times y, which is 5, and z, which is 2. So now that we have it all written out, make sure you have it written out correctly. Then I'm gonna have you solve this with your partner. Okay, so in this next step, I would multiply any 2 numbers that I want to multiply together. I could do 3 and 4 or 4 and 5. I'm gonna do 4 and 5. So I have 3 times 20. And then I have 4 times 8. And then I have 10 times 2. Okay. So I just multiplied 2 of the numbers together. Now I'm gonna multiply the next set together. 3 times 20 is 60. 4 times 8 is 32. And 10 times 2 is 20. Any questions so far? Okay, now I'm gonna start adding. 60 plus 32 is 92. And 92 plus 20 is 112. And so that would be our final answer. All right. Thank you. Okay, let's go ahead and go on to example 8, and then I'll have you do 9 on your own. So now we have different values, okay? So this time my x is 5. And my y is 3. Oh, I don't have any y's. And my z is 2. All right, so let's plug in our values. So we have 4 times x. My x is 5. Minus z, and my z is 2. And then we have an exponent of 2 on the outside. Remember, with parentheses, you want to work from the inside out. So on the inside, I have multiplication and subtraction, and according to order of operations, I have to do my multiplication first. So the first thing I'm going to do is 4 times 5, and I get 20, and then bring down what I did not work on. The next thing I need to do is subtraction. So 20 minus 2 is 18. And now I need to square 18. This is where you're going to need to show some work. Okay. So let's multiply 18 times 18. And you should get 324. Are there any questions on that one? All right, I want you to work on example 9 on your own. Okay, for number 9, this is how you should have written it out. And now I'm going to start solving it. So 2 times 5 is 10. 10 minus 2 is 8. And 8 squared is 64. Any questions on that? If you didn't get it right, go ahead and check your work real quick.
Keep it as an improper fraction. Always reduce, but you don't have to put it into a mixed number or a decimal. Reduce if you can. Okay, we're gonna move on to example 10. Example 10 is put in there to remind you how to add fractions, how to find common denominators. So we're gonna rewrite this problem with our values. So we have 1 over x, which is 5. We're gonna add that to 1 over y, which is 3. And we're gonna add that to 1 over z, which is 2. So we have fractions with unlike denominators. Can somebody tell me what we have to do?
Add them.
Make them have like denominators. You have to have common denominators. Okay, I don't stack them up. You can if you want to stack them up. So between 5, 3, and 2, what is our common denominator?
15.
Okay, so
I mean,
2
30.
Yeah, 30. Okay, so what that means, for those of you who need a little bit of a review, is that we have to turn all of these denominators into a 30. So I have to ask myself for each fraction, what do I do to this 5 to make it a 30? What do I do?
Times.
Oh, you have to, it's kind of.
Times 6.
Yes.
So if I multiply 5 times 6, I have to multiply my numerator by 6. So I'm gonna multiply that by 6. So when I do that, I get 6 over 30. Now I do that to the next one. What do I multiply 3 by to get 30? 10. And if I multiply my denominator by 30, I have to multiply my numerator by 30.
Not by 30.
Oh,
But.
10. Sorry, thank you. I made a mistake. So by 10. Okay. So plus 10 over 30. Okay, what do I multiply 2 by to get 30?
15.
15. Okay, 1 times 15 is 15 and 2 times 15 is 30. Now, how do I add fractions with common denominators?
I mean, you don't have it all.
You add all the top numbers. What do you do at the bottom? You leave them the same. So we have 10 plus 6 is 16, plus 15 is 31, and my denominator stays the same. Now, a lot of you are going to want to do one of two things. You're going to want to turn it to a mixed number, 1 and 1/30th. Or you're going to want to turn it into a decimal and do all this long division. In algebra 1, we stopped doing that. Okay, so please, all you have to do is say, okay, can I reduce the fraction? Can I simplify that? No, I can't. So you leave it as an improper fraction. Okay, for example 11, all you're gonna do is you're gonna substitute it in and then you add your numbers in the denominator and you're pretty much finished. So I'm just showing you the difference between something that looks like this and something that looks like this. So in this one, let's go ahead and plug in our numbers. We have 1 over x, which is 5, plus y, which is 3, plus z, which is 2. And all you're gonna do is add those numbers together. 5 plus 3 plus 2 is 10. So your answer is 110. That one was pretty quick. Yeah. All right. I want you and your partner to do number 12 on your own. If you are waiting, you can go to the back and you can try to figure out how to do interest rate problems. We will not finish the back. We might attempt one problem. I will finish it on Friday. So go ahead and try example 12 on your own. Yes. Okay, here is the answer to number 12. So go ahead and check and make sure you did it correctly. Oops, you can't see it. There we go.
Oh, you're supposed to. Why is it sometimes you don't? Oh, it is 7. Oh. Yeah.
All right, we're doing good.
Did it completely wrong. There we go.
Okay, let's go ahead and go to page 3. And we're going to do, at least one. I think we'll get through the first interest rate problem, and on Friday we'll finish this and start our new lessons. Remember, this lesson is not due till Monday, so we're good. Okay, so when we're talking about interest rate, I want to make sure that you understand the process behind it. When you are investing or saving money and you put money into the bank, that is called your principal. So say when you're born, your parents put $500 in the bank and they leave it there until you graduate high school and they want to put it towards your college tuition, okay? So they put $500 in. That is your principal. That is the P up here. The principal, which is your starting amount of money. That's what you start out with. It stays in the bank for 18 or 19 years, right? A long time. The 18 or 19 years is your time. And you have to always have your time in years. Okay. Along that whole 18 or 19 years, you are gaining 2% interest every month. Your interest is the rate. And your interest always has to be in decimal form. Okay. And then the interest, the I, is when you take your money out of the bank when you graduate, how much money beyond that 500 do you have? That's your interest. That's how much you earn. So it's almost like you're getting free money. All you have to do is put money in the bank, leave it in there for a long time, and you're getting money on top of that. Yeah. It's
For money?
yeah. So I'm going to show you two things that you need to be careful of. First is the interest rate. If I tell you that you're earning an interest rate of 2%, but when I put it in the formula, you have to put it in decimal form. How do we turn a percent to a decimal? You move it to the left 2 times. 1, 2. So that 2% becomes 0.02. So what you're doing is you're moving your decimal 2 places left. So you can add that to your notes right there. Okay, now let's look at the time. What happens if you only leave your money in there for 3 months? So it says it has to be written in years, but it's 3 months. How do we turn that number into years? You divide it by 12. This becomes 3 over 12. And you can reduce that to 1/4 or 0.25. Okay. So if you're given months, you divide it by 12. If you're given years, you leave it alone. Okay. So there's just 2 things I want you to be careful of before you do all of your interest rate problems. All right, let's go down to example 12. It says calculate the simple interest earned cross this off. That is an error in my notes. By investing $52,300 in a bank account, earning 16.5 interest annually, that means every year for 15 years. So let's write out our formula. I equals PRT. And let's substitute the values that we know we have. Okay, so up here, what does 52,300 represent in our formula? Principal, P. What does 16.5% represent? The rate, R. But we have to turn that to a decimal. What is it as a decimal?
165 or 0.165.
0.165, good. And then what is 15 years? The time, T. Okay, so let's plug those values in. I equals the principal, 52,300 times the rate, which is 0.165, times the years, which is 15.
So you just multiply all of it.
Then you multiply all of it together. So I'm gonna go ahead and give you time to multiply all of this together, then we're gonna come back and we're gonna check our answer. Okay, so this was a pretty challenging problem with a lot of multiplication. You can tell that I had to white some out and restart my problem. And a lot of times that's gonna happen. You're gonna do all this multiplication and it doesn't look right. So make sure you're showing your work. If you need to check your answer with a calculator, please do so. If it's wrong, you need to go back and redo your work. Okay, we're gonna look at example 13. We're gonna write out the formula first. We have interest equals principal times rate times time, okay? And we're gonna plug in everything that they give us. So our principal is 15,000. Our rate is 6.75%, and when you move the decimal place for 6.75, remember, we can't have it as a percent, so to get rid of that percent, we move the decimal over twice. So 0.0675 times the time in years, they give it to us in years, so it's 4. And so now what you're gonna do is you're gonna multiply all of these together, and then we'll come back and check the answer. Okay, so I'm gonna pause the video so you can do that. Okay, so now we're gonna check example 13 after you do all the math, and you should come up with 40,500. Remember that your units have to be added onto that, and your units would be your dollar sign representing the money portion of it. Okay. Now we're gonna move on to examples 14 and 15. We're gonna set them up, and then I am going to give you a chance to solve them, and then check your answers. Okay, so going to 14, we're gonna write out the formula first. And then we are going to substitute in our numbers. And we have principal at 725. Our rate is 14%, but remember, we have to turn that percent into a decimal. And when you do not see a decimal, just put your decimal at the end of the number. There's always an imaginary decimal at the end of every number if you don't have one. And you move your decimal 2 places to the left. So your rate would be 0.14. And notice that your time is 2 months, but we have to put that in years, just like I explained up here with 3 months. So we're gonna put your 2 months into years. And remember, you take the 2 and you divide it by 12. Notice with this one, when you simplify it, you get 1/6. I would not divide 1 by 6 because you get a repeating decimal. So you need to leave this as a fraction, and you're gonna have to multiply with a fraction. So here, we're gonna multiply 1/6. So when you solve this one, what I would do is multiply 725 by 0.14 and then divide it by 6, because that's essentially what you're doing when you multiply by a fraction. Okay. Now let's set up example 15. Okay, so on this one, we're gonna go ahead and write out the formula. And on this one, I want you to try to plug this in on your own. Notice that the time is 15 months, so put that over 12. Simplify your fraction. If you can turn it in a whole number, do so. Otherwise, leave it as a fraction and multiply it. If you can turn it into a non-repeating decimal, you can do that as well. Actually, let me do that with you real quick. 15 over 12. If I reduce that, they're both divisible by 3. And you get 5/4. As a mixed number, that's 1 1/4, which equals 1.25. So you can either multiply it by the fraction of 5/4, or you can use 1.25. And then don't forget that your rate needs to be changed to a decimal. All right, I'm gonna give you a minute to work on both of these problems, then we'll come back and check them. Okay, with example 14, I went ahead and multiplied 725 by 0.14. And you should see my work right here. I got 101.50. Now I want to multiply that by 1/6, and I'm going to show you how I do that. 101.50. I'm just going to put that over 1 and multiply it by 1/6. When you multiply with fractions, you just multiply straight across. So 101.50 times 1 is 101.50. 1 times 6 is 6. So now I need to divide this. Whenever we're dealing with money, you do not want to leave it as an improper fraction. You do want to do the division because you want a dollar amount. So I'm going to take 101.50 and I'm going to divide it by 6. Now I'm adding another 0 because we want to round it to the nearest dollar amount. So you have to go over 3 decimal places. So this is going to be. So I've done all of this division. So I'm going to round it to the nearest dollar amount, which is 91 cents. But the 6 right here tells me to add 1. So my final answer here is going to be $16.92. Now, I know this was a challenging problem, so if you have any questions about any of the interest rate problems you do on your homework, please email me or come to help class and I will help you out. Okay, I'm gonna pause the video and finish up this one. I'm just gonna multiply all of these. I chose to use 1.25 as my value for 15 months. Okay, this is the final answer for example 15, and here is all of my multiplication work. If you did not get this answer, go ahead and pause the video and just check your work and see where you maybe made a mistake. And so that concludes lesson 1.4, evaluating algebraic expressions.